Hey, you're about to watch a clip from episode number 2 of the Better Man podcast, my podcast for Man Flow Yoga. If you want to see the full episode, you can do that on any major podcasting platform. More details below. Hope you enjoyed this clip and hope you can check out the full episode.
I came into understanding nasal breathing through this resistance breathing device because I was all about the resistance breathing device. For like the first 2 years, I was really invested in this. And then I after enough time of using this thing, and look, we were not using it in everything, but I caught on to the fact that I was using my nose most of the time
Mm.
because it was so much easier to draw it, like with resistance I could get more power from my nose. I was digging deeper by drawing a breath from my nose versus I can get away shallow. My neck muscles start, I start to engage my neck muscles, etc.
Mm-hmm.
I just can get away with a lot more. So that began at that point. I then started looking at the physiology behind everything, and I was
So,
just, yeah.
so that's really interesting because I have to tell people ask me all the time, do I have to breathe in and out of my nose? I'm like, I mean, you don't have to. You're not going to blow up, but
No.
it's better if you do. And then they say, why? And then I say, well, fortunately, I have Brian Mackenzie on the podcast, and he can tell you why nasal breathing is better. So I'd love for
Yeah.
you to answer that if you could.
Yeah, real simple. The simple answer to that is your respiratory system was designed with your nose in mind, not your mouth.
Mm.
Your mouth was designed with your digestive system and communication system, your vocal cords, right? So there is really one main way of filtering the air when you breathe through your mouth, which is the fourth basically way of filtering air if you breathe through your nose. Okay. So you have hair, you have as many hair follicles in your nose as you do on your head. That's a filtering system. The mucus is a filtering system. Then you have turbinates, which is the most advanced filtering system that we know of. And we can't actually replicate that. Like, we can't actually replicate. There's a lot of things we think we're so really smart with, and filtering is not one of them. We cannot even come close to how the nose actually filters things, spins the air, moves the air, humidifies the air, gets it ready for going into your lung tissue, which has no defense. You have one, which is your tonsils here, and that's about it. Your saliva is designed to break things down and aid in things, but it does not filter air. The air passes right through. So it's an emergency system, and it's a system that's designed for when you're actually speaking, which is also why if you talk a lot all day, you feel, a little cooked at the end of the day. Or if you're anybody who lectures or goes and speaks somewhere, why you'll feel exhausted when you're done, because you're actually using different energy. You're digging out you're in that yellow zone that I talked about earlier. If you breathe out of your mouth, you're a yellow zone person. So you're burning the high, like you're just burning at mid range all the time. And talking is one of those things.
So, and one of the other parts of what you were discovering with your training was that people needed to train at the lower intensity. So they needed to train at a level in which they could maintain nasal breathing as opposed to huffing and puffing in and out of their mouth. And that allowed them to, even though they weren't putting out as much and they weren't doing, they weren't running as fast, or they weren't whatever, well, in terms of endurance athlete, they weren't moving as fast. They were making more progress over time training at these low. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we started testing this stuff. Nobody's tested it. So we, the Rob Wilson, Brian Diaz, and Emily Hightower, people who I work with. Rob and I, in particular, at the time, decided to get a few metabolic carts, and that's something that analyzes gas exchange. That's how you test when you test VO2 max, when you test energy systems, when you test how people use energy, it's done through gas exchange, because we know by how much oxygen you bring in, how much oxygen comes out, and how much CO2 comes out of the system, of we know what you're burning or using as fuel. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So whether you're using fats, proteins, or carbohydrates, and that's basically the process of how respiratory exchange ratio works, right? Um, it's a and so we went and started testing things with like nasal breathing. And this is where we ended up developing a gear system towards things, because we started to see that there were particular gears that actually happen. So a lot of people who are onto this are like, yeah, nasal breathing's everything. You just got to nasal breathe. And it's like, yeah, you don't understand quite yet. You've gone about half what, you've put your foot in the water. It goes beyond that, but that's a great place to start, and you're going to see fundamental changes. And the biggest fundamental change is that if you stay nasal breathing, you can pretty much guarantee you're just in or just out of that yellow zone. So intense nasal breathing will have you in that yellow zone, right? So if I'm, that's yellow. You're definitely burning carbohydrate at that level. You're becoming a little more anaerobic at this place.
And what would be the level that you would want to? Let's say you're going for a 5-mile run. What's the pace of nasal breathing you would want to have?
That's a gear. We call that a gear 1.
Okay.
Gear 1 is primarily what you want to develop, but most people don't like that because they have to slow down so much. And this is where that green zone comes in, is that people just really, their egos are attached to things. Greg Glassman had a very famous quote. He said something at a dinner once, and he's like, yeah, men will die for points. I figured that out. So we made a sport about it. Like, well, he just used people's like dysfunction against themselves. We are so willing to die for what points, for how fast we think we need to be, versus actually taking the time to understand physiologically how to develop. And this is part of that American paradox, right? Like in the West, like it's a Western thing. It's not just American. It's the West, Canada as well. But so when you're in a gear 1, which is an equal in and out nasal only, that's about roughly one breath every 3 to 6 seconds in length. Okay. That's a large spectrum, but roughly at about 3 seconds from what we've seen in developed people. So there is a caveat here, and this is where the research has been really shady. Is there's been 1 or 2 research papers done where the researchers didn't actually do homework. They just basically were like, all right, let's just have a bunch of people go do some nasal breathing and have some people do some mouth breathing, and nobody had any development in anything, and that's not how physiology works. Nonetheless, when you are in this equal in and out nasal only, you can guarantee you're pretty highly aerobic. So meaning you're really on that green end. Now, the interesting thing, what we saw was that through development of this, in about 4 to 6 weeks for a lot of people, that will translate to some very high output in the green zone. So like like I had a CrossFitter who basically, he was a games athlete who, when we started him, he could only get to a 140 heart rate nasal breathing. This is a gear 3, but in a month, we had him at a 171 heart rate, and his breathing was closer towards a gear 2, gear 1, and he felt like he could go forever. Yeah.
Hope you guys enjoyed that clip. 2 days from now, on Saturday, we've got a clip with Kelly Starrett going live here on the YouTube channel. Subscribe, be sure you don't miss out. And if you'd like to get more info on the podcast, you can sign up to become a Better Man VIP for free at manfulyoga.com/better-man-VIP. Links in the description below here. Thanks for watching. Hope you liked this video. Leave a comment if you have some feedback, and I hope to see you on another video soon. Bye.